The Trump administration asked the Supreme Court to intervene in its case of a Maryland father mistakenly deported to El Salvador, and the high court did. The government had until midnight Monday to return Salvadoran national Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia to the U.S. He had been sent to a mega prison in El Salvador due to an administrative error, despite a 2019 protective order that should have prevented him from being sent there. Well, the government asked the Supreme Court to halt that deadline, and they did. Chief Justice John Roberts says the pause will give the Supreme Court more time to consider the case. CBS News Justice Department reporter Jake Rosen joins us now. Jake, what was behind Justice Roberts' decision to pause the deadline, and what happens next?
Well, part of this, Lindsay, is just how quickly this case has developed and how quickly, after the government admitted in a court filing last week that it had no argument because it had actually falsely deported Mr. Abrego Garcia, and then a Department of Justice attorney on Friday arguing the same, that this case really sped through the court system here. I mean, a lot of the other cases that we've followed, yes, these cases have reached the Supreme Court. Yes, the Supreme Court puts in a stay, but usually that's to consider previous arguments and compare case law and see what the Supreme Court has done in the past. Both the attorneys for Mr. Abrego Garcia, the Department of Justice attorney, and the federal judge in Maryland all said on Friday that there is no case law that works with this case because it is so unprecedented. Yes, there have been cases of people who feel like they've been falsely imprisoned in the United States, but none that have been brought to a country like El Salvador, none that have been brought to a supermax prison where you can't reach your client. So this is for the Supreme Court to get a briefing by 5 o'clock tomorrow. Attorneys for Mr. Abrego Garcia will file their documents as to why this stay should be lifted and why Mr. Abrego Garcia should be ordered back to the United States again. The deadline for midnight obviously has been punted indefinitely until the Supreme Court hears more on this or either gets that filing and makes a decision on the fly potentially this week. Why
was the government saying, look, we can't get him back by midnight Monday?
Well, it's not very complicated. It's because they say that this agreement with El Salvador results in which the United States has dropped off hundreds of prisoners at that CCOT prison. They claim that because they're technically there, they are part of El Salvador's prison system. Both the Fourth Circuit Appeals Court today, which issued a decision denying this Department of Justice appeal, and the judge on Friday said that that's actually not true, that these people who are being held there at the will of the United States. They're still in U.S. custody. They're just being held in a prison outside of the country. And they claim, and the Circuit Court wrote, that the government cannot escape from its responsibility to return Abrego Garcia to the United States by claiming it now lacks authority to control El Salvador. Controlling El Salvador was exactly what the Solicitor General, who wrote to the Supreme Court today, said, saying the United States does not control the sovereign nation of El Salvador, nor can it compel El Salvador to follow a federal judge's bidding. We see no effort by the Trump administration so far, neither public statements, in addition to that, that would suggest that they've even taken the first step to potentially calling the Salvadoran government to get Mr. Abrego Garcia back.
Jake, you mentioned a DOJ attorney a couple of times in this case on Friday when it was argued before a judge. That lawyer is now on leave. Why?
Yeah, he's on administrative leave. That's because in this court hearing on Friday, he did a couple of things that Attorney General Pam Bondi took issue with. The first of which was that he criticized the government for not giving him the facts of the case, saying that he felt he was frustrated by the lack of response he had gotten from questions he had asked. The first of which, and I think the most important of which when you consider a due process case like this, is under what grounds was he actually detained again? The government had no answer for the attorney. The attorney was transparent with the court. And in addition to that, he agreed off the top of the case with the plaintiffs for Mr. Abrego Garcia, saying the facts of the case are conceded. Basically saying we have no argument to make here besides the fact that we're not going to try to get him back, but everything is accurate, i.e., that he is being detained there illegally. He was deported without notice and without the proper court hearings, and that he is in El Salvador's supermax prison with no legal access.
All right, Jake Rosen, thank you.